Hey, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Cafecito. We are having a great conversation this week, like we do every single week. But I'm excited for today's conversation because we haven't had this and we know so many people in the DEI space. So I'm so happy, Tess, that you joined us, and I'm excited to have this conversation. We're going to be talking about behavioral science and the do's and don'ts of DEI. We're going to be breaking some of that down. So welcome, Tess, to
Thank you.
Cafecito.
I'm so happy to be here. This is awesome.
Yay. So you have been in this space in behavioral science for a while. You're also an author, so we want to talk about your book as well.
Okay.
But I want to start by sharing a bit about you and give us a little bit of your journey within behavioral science, and then how it led you first to start your business, Brave Space Consulting.
Okay. So I'm a Mexican American. My father is Mexican. My mother is American. And I was a behavior analyst for almost 30 years before I transitioned into the DEI space by way of social justice engagement. Um, what I started noticing is when I was in the social justice space, I noticed that I don't just there's a lot of ways to do it wrong, right? And so when I was in that space, I really wanted to be a more effective agent of change. So I started researching because, as a in the behavior analysis world, we research is everything. Like, we don't do it if it's not proven in the research. So I just started researching, and I saw there were a lot of similarities between. So I was a behavior therapist with children with autism. I saw a lot of similarities in the research between what I had been doing and what's happening in the corporate world. For example, research shows that children who have delayed speech, they gain speech faster if every one of their attempts is praised rather than corrected. Okay. Similarly, employees are more productive, engaged, and stay at the company longer when a performance review focuses on their strengths rather than what they need to do better. So it's just, science is science, right? So I feel like some of these concepts are really universal, and there's actually a behavior science for business called organizational behavior management. So as a behavior analyst, of course, I was going to integrate what I had already known to be true into DEI, and I wouldn't do DEI without research best practice, without kind of some of these concepts, because it's very easy to do it wrong, right? It's very easy to do it wrong, and a lot of DEI is not effective, and some DEI can be harmful. So that's why I rely on the research so heavily.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Let's talk about that. What is the wrong way that you see or have observed people doing it out there? And then let's go into what's the right way.
Okay. Great. So and I know there might be a little bit of negative feedback about this one, but this is just what I've observed. A lot of times when people interview me to hire me, I am not the first DEI person that they've hired. And generally, when a DEI company or agency is primarily anti-racism, now that is an important, anti-racism is extremely important. But when a company is looking for DEI, they're looking for kind of broader concepts. And sometimes I'm treading, so I'm just gonna say it.
No, don't watch Treadley. Say it.
Okay. Sometimes when we make people feel bad, when we make people of privilege, people who have never been discriminated against, people who are not a marginalized identity, when we make them feel bad, we can't be effective. Right? Because shame, when you feel shame, shame is not a catalyst for growth. Shame is not a catalyst to do better. Shame doesn't inspire us to be like, hey, you know, I'm really going to listen to this, what this person says. You're like in a downward spiral, and it's not effective. It's just not effective. It's important. Yes. It's true. Yes. It's not effective. And so that's where some of the backlash, I believe, comes from. Because there's a lot of backlash right now in DEI. And I believe that that is because people of privilege are made to feel bad. And they don't like it, right? And then they won't listen to you anymore. So my approach is I try to create this very nurturing, very supportive, light, fun atmosphere. And when I talk about DEI, one of the first identities that I talk about is age, because everybody has an age, right? And everybody has experienced, like, you know, children have the least power, you know, of any age. And so we kind of talk about that, and that's something that everybody can relate to. And that kind of starts people understanding a little bit more, and just helps them to kind of be open to exploring more bias and more ideas and concepts about discrimination and how that happens in the workplace.
You mean like in the sense for children that they don't have agency at that moment because they're children, so they just abide by certain rules, and then versus in the adult corporate world, you know, well, you're either there or you're not, you know,
right.
You either do or you don't.
I guess I mean, like, probably everybody in the room at an office has been a child at one point. So they remember not having the freedom, right? Not having all that stuff, maybe. And also, like, every generation has its own, like, issue where they feel discriminated against because of their age. So that I start there because that's something that everybody can understand and everybody can relate to. And if it doesn't feel like it's about you personally, I think that's another reason that a lot of people don't find it particularly relevant, right? Other things that I would say, another don't, a DEI don't, and this is partially been my experience and also just from what I've heard in the field. Don't do it yourself. Like, a lot of, like, these organizations, they think, sometimes I feel like people know, oh, racism is bad, right? Discrimination is bad. So that means, and I know that, so that means I don't discriminate and I don't have any racism in me. But we have had discrimination and superiority, like hierarchical ideas since we were born. Like, everybody in this country, and probably in many other countries, we are born into some ideas and beliefs that aren't true and that are harmful. And it has to do with one person's superiority over another, right? You could call it, like, patriarchy, whatever you want to call it. We are all swimming in that pool. Like, we are all breathing in that air. So this work has to do with everybody. But there is a science to it, right? There's ways to do it that work. There's ways to do it that don't work. So if you're in an organization, you're in a business, and you're like, let's start a DEI committee, it might just be a waste of time. It might actually do harm. Another thing that I've seen happen that's even worse than just starting a volunteer DEI committee is making it mandatory for your marginalized identities to be a part of that committee.
Do they do that? Are there organizations that make it mandatory?
They do that. I know of one particular instance where that was happening, and that's unpaid labor, right? That was taking time away from their job so that they had to make up. So it's just kind of continuing that history of requiring unpaid labor from marginalized identities. So that's a big no-no. One of the most important things, and I think people don't realize this, research shows that the most important kind of factor in whether or not a DEI initiative is going to be successful or not in your organization. Do you want to guess what it is?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if it was probably wouldn't guess it. It's commitment from the top management.
Yeah.
So the boss, the boss is really more important. And I have done, and I wish I would have, if I had a time machine, I probably would have said something. But like I've been hired to do these trainings for the whole organization, right? Or all the staff, like 500 staff or whatever, and the
Yep.
owner doesn't come.
Yeah.
And to me, that they might not realize it.
Yeah.
That you are setting the culture by
Yeah.
not coming to the DEI training that you paid for, right? But you don't think you need it. Like, so that's why I'm saying, like, it's everybody has work to do in reducing our bias, right? And growing awareness of other identities and needs.
Yep. And I want to backtrack for a second for something that was in the news, right? Where someone didn't understand what DEI was, right?
Yep.
So let's break that down to what exactly DEI is to help some people understand it better.
So DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what that means a lot of times in businesses is it's like anti-bias training, might be allyship training. A lot of businesses want a more diverse staff. Yeah. And this is another thing.
Because it generates revenue and it's good for the company and it's good for the overall morale. But some do it for because it was
clout. Because then you look but this is what I always tell those companies.
Exactly.
Do not waste your time and money hiring marginalized identities unless you already have a culture where they're going to stay, because turnaround is expensive. And that generally, if you don't have your culture right in your workplace, if you don't have a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture, you're like wasting valuable time and money on getting all these like DEI hires, as we say, right?
Yeah. It's not just because they're a person of color or a female or of any other, anything specific. It's more though that these are qualified people that were often overlooked previously.
Absolutely.
So it's not like, hey, let's just, this person is of color. We're supposed to just give them a position, whether they're qualified or not. No, they are qualified.
Right.
Most
they're
likely.
Overqualified.
Yes, overqualified in many instances.
Right. And a lot of times, for women, and I'm sure like any women listening to this can probably be like, oh yeah, that's happened to me. We are asked more. We are in organizations, in businesses, no matter what our positions are, we are asked to do more unpaid labor than men. That's just a fact. And then women of color are asked to do even more unpaid labor. So like these things you might not, if you were, cis hetero white male, and you have been, in this position of leadership for a really long time, these are things that you might not be aware of, right? You might not even see it unless you've experienced it. So that's why commitment from top management and just an acknowledgement from top management that they also have something to learn is the most important factor in DEI. Wow. And so getting back to like hiring. So here are some of the research benefits of having a diverse workforce. You move into new markets. You can, you can move into global markets. So there's like more earning potential there. Studies have shown that having a more diverse leadership in a company can reduce risk. One of my favorite statistics is banks with a woman on the board save an average of $7 million a year because they take less risks, or they're more responsible with their risk taking.
They're more calculated.
There's also less fraud. So like that's money on the table.
$7 million. Yeah.
Yeah, a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so these are some of the benefits. Also, so we're talking about, a diverse workforce, but what I like to talk about, or what my, I guess, niche is for DEI, is I want to help organizations create this culture that's equitable and inclusive. And when employees feel like they belong, their turnover rate drops 50%, sick days drop 75%.
Yep.
There was a recent study in, I believe it was Australia, where they learned that employees with bad bosses have a 60% chance, 60% increase in a chance of a heart attack. So like, yeah. So the culture affects employee health tremendously.
Wow.
So yeah, so these are some of the benefits of having a more inclusive and equitable workplace is, you know, you can earn more money in new markets. You lose less money because you're smarter about risk. That's one of the benefits of what they call diversity of thought. When you have a lot of different leaders, you know, who are being listened to, yeah, you keep your employees for longer and they stay healthier.
Oh my
So
God.
less sick days. Yeah.
I didn't know. Look at that. Yeah, well, I mean, people are either going to leave or, you know, tough it out for a little bit, but then they'll ultimately leave. And it's true, you know, that it's the turnover rate and it's if you're staying there because the position, you know, is obviously providing a livelihood, there's risks involved. But so how do we get organizations to really understand the importance of them showing up and leading and not feeling like this is a task or a checkbox that they need to check off, you know, but more so the importance and the impact to the organization. We've already mentioned financially, health-wise, this is critical, but not just for your employees and not just for them staying, but for yourself too as an organization. To really have that
sustainability of the organization kind of nowadays depends on this diversity, right? It's not an easy time for businesses.
Yeah.
So how I do it, how I get buy-in from the decision makers in organizations is the research. And I feel like that has set me apart from some of the other DEI firms. Because I'm so aware of the research and I'm so tightly tied to it. And decision makers understand research, right? They understand best practice. And the first question that everybody asks is like, what's everybody else doing? You know, how is everybody else solving this? And so like research best practice shows this is what has been proven to work for these, you know, for IBM or for Target. So Fortune 500 companies are much more likely to spend money on DEI initiatives than other smaller organizations because they understand the impact and the revenue that's driven. So that's the bottom line, right? For most businesses is money.
Money.
Right. Another thing that I tell people is like training costs money. Equity, I also do like equity audits or strategic planning. Yes, it costs money to hire a consultant, but it's a lot less expensive than a lawsuit.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. This is, we need to create and turn this into an article. These are such great points that are just straight up, no nonsense, that people can just start thinking about it in a different way. Because there's with everything that's gone on with DEI and that pullback that you hear a lot of organizations are pulling back on the DEI. How have you found that space, and what are the conversations around organizations that say we're pulling back because what? Because why?
Right.
When we've already know it's beneficial.
It's like, so again, how I do it is I show the financial benefits. Because you really can't argue with that. And everybody wants that. Everyone, like at the end of the day, so the business, they call it, so rather than like the moral prerogative approach to DEI, like this is the moral thing to do, right? This is the just thing to do. Instead of getting buy-in that way, we get buy-in by saying this is good for your business.
Exactly. Yep.
This is going to help people stay longer. This is going to help you lose less money on turnover. This is going to help, your employees stay healthier. So your insurance costs are lower. This is going to help you move into new markets, because unfortunately, that is the language that business owners speak, right? And that's the language that they understand. And I feel like the whole backlash of DEI in certain states, I'm in Massachusetts, so I'm not really affected. But in certain states, right, like DEI is out, like illegal, which is so ridiculous. But it's because people don't understand what it is. It is business. It's business consulting. It's going to help your business stay afloat. It's going to help your business be sustainable. And so I think A, people don't know what it is. B, there's no governing body. There's no governing body for diversity, equity, and inclusion right now. So anybody can peddle anything and call it DEI. And I think a lot of that, it doesn't work. Like a lot of it doesn't work. So that's another reason that there might be a backlash right now, because people aren't understanding the key concepts of research best practice. Yeah. And like I said at the beginning, they're making people of privilege feel bad. And like, yeah, sure, like they deserve to feel bad. But it's active, right? Like it's not
horrible.
Right. So I really try in my trainings and all the programming that I do, I really try to like invite people in and create like a very safe space. And that's why I named my company Brave Space Consulting, because you can't guarantee any space is safe. Like, I don't know what somebody else is going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say that might trigger somebody. But what I'm trying to do is create a culture where people feel that they can show up authentically, right? And be brave.
I love that. That's beautiful. I love it. What a great name. What a great name. So let's talk about your book, Mindfully Inclusive. When did that come out, and where can people get it?
Okay, thank you for reminding me to talk about that. So I do work with businesses, but when I was a behavior analyst for all those years, all those decades, I worked with children, and so my heart is with children, but I'm a single mom and I have all the bills to pay, so I have to work with adults. It's more. But I work with an organization called True Diversity in Taunton, Massachusetts, and they do a summer program for underprivileged kids. This is their 4th year, and so they hired me to be because I didn't say this yet, but because of research, I incorporate mindfulness into all of the DEI stuff, help people grow awareness, help people reduce their bias. Mindfulness there's lots of research that shows that that's a nice, easy way to help people grow awareness. So, I wrote this curriculum for this program, and then I just decided to publish it because I was getting such great feedback on it. So the book is called Mindfully Inclusive. It's 24 lesson plans for school-aged children and youth. It's very versatile. Each lesson plan has like an engagement question to get the kids thinking, a short little discussion, and then an activity that kind of integrates the lesson into their bodies. It can be like breath work, and it can be just like a mindful minute. Sometimes it's games, and then there's a journal prompt. And so I wish I had a copy of it here to show you, but so basically it's connects social emotional learning with diversity, equity, and inclusion skills. So it helps kids. I don't think I have to, like, I think it goes without saying that, like, kids get it better than adults. Yeah. And also, like, what a beautiful skill set to have and to start developing when you're so young, right? Right. So one of my desires for this book is I really have I really feel for kids in the school system. I think a lot of what happens in schools is maybe not what's best for kids, and I think it's hard on kids, And so I wanted to help teachers help kids create a space inside that was anti-oppression inside, because I feel like even as children, like we can kind of like have that internalized oppression, right? And so I wanted to help kids create a space inside of self-compassion, and I wanted to give them tools so that when they do feel challenged or hurt or scared, that they have these tools that they can go back and regulate their nervous system. And also, like, I feel like it's really important for teachers to have some of these tools as well, right? So that was my desire for the book. So you can buy that book anywhere on Amazon, any like bookshop, Barnes and Noble. It's called Mindfully Inclusive.
We'll put a link in the chat of the threads of this, so people can get easy access to it. That's awesome, because that's where it starts, right, with children. And until children learn to own that sense of self and the sense of appreciation of others when they grow into adults, even when the world tries to jade them, you know, depending on what happens, they still have
we're all jaded. Like, we jade each other, we jade ourselves. Like, so it's nice to have a few little tools, even just like taking a deep breath, writing an affirmation, like something like that, where you can kind of combat all of that that's coming at us all the time, right? Especially as children.
I love it. I love it. I think we need to do more of these conversations, because they're just like, I'm like, we're at time, but it's still, there's more. I think we need to, you know, with so many individuals in this space that or so many organizations that are not fully understanding. Some are, and some are letting it go for whatever reason, because whatever. I mean, the impact on the bottom line at the end of the day, and the good that you do in the world by really being that leader and showing the world what can be done. You need diverse mindsets. There's just no way around that. So I don't know why more companies don't embrace it as much wholly, but I think it's because of lack of understanding.
Really successful ones do.
Yeah.
So that's, at least we have that going for us. And I actually did write an article about some of this stuff, and I sent you the link. I don't know if anyone's interested.
We'll share it. We'll put it in the thread as well. Yep, in the body of this email. I love it. I love it, Tess. I want to keep going. So as we wrap up, give us like your closing thoughts on this, however long you take, but give us your closing thoughts on this conversation, and what either individuals or organizations, you speak to both or one or the other, whatever you feel called to do. But you're something that can, I'm sure they've been impacted by this episode so already, but
wonderful. So for anyone and everyone who's listening, the best place to start with DEI is self-compassion. And because I believe when we feel better about ourselves, we are better to each other. And so that is where I start. And that is where I encourage everybody to start, whether you're, a teacher, a student, a decision maker in a company, or entry-level position. The best way to start with DEI is with self-compassion, because that kind of helps us open up and have more space for other people and other perspectives.
I love that. Thank you so much for this conversation. I look forward to doing more things with you. For those of you who haven't joined, make sure that you connect with our community inside our Mighty Hub, unitedlatinas.mn.co. Join us in there to continue the conversation. And that's it. We are at time. I hope you all have a blessed day, a beautiful day. No one is hired, shouldn't be in a position out of pity. It is out of power that we need to put people in those positions, because they do have, statistics already show that diversity increases your profitability of any organization, and you get a diverse set of thinking. So, I mean, you're targeting your audience more impactfully, because now you're serving them. They're working for you and you're serving them. So,
amen.
Awesome. All right, guys. Really
fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yay. Stay on one little second as we go. Take care, guys. Be well, and we'll see you next week.